Manipulation really begins with control. It begins with a test. How manipulators test your weakness, warrior. Manipulators rarely attack immediately. They test first. Before control begins, before manipulation becomes obvious, there is always a small signal, a small moment, a small test. It may appear harmless, a strange comment, a subtle insult, a request that feels slightly uncomfortable. Most people ignore these moments. They assume nothing important happened. They think it was accidental. They think it meant nothing. But manipulators are watching carefully. They are studying your reaction. Because every reaction reveals something: information, emotion, tolerance, and information creates leverage. Niccolo Machiavelli once observed something powerful about human behavior. Power rarely appears suddenly. It grows through small advantages. If someone wants control over another person, they do not begin with domination. They begin with observation. They test the limits. They measure resistance. They study behavior. Manipulators follow this same strategy. They do not guess your boundaries. They discover them through tests. The first test is the disrespect test. This test is small, almost invisible. They interrupt you. They dismiss your opinion. They make a subtle insult disguised as humor. Then they wait and they observe. They study your reaction carefully. If you challenge the disrespect, the test fails because a boundary appeared. But if you laugh nervously or ignore the moment, a manipulator learns something important. They learn the predictable mind tolerates discomfort. And once tolerance appears, the next test begins. The predictable mind tries to keep peace. It avoids confrontation. It hopes kindness will eventually earn respect. But manipulation does not work that way, because every tolerated disrespect sends a message. It tells the manipulator there are no boundaries here. The unreadable mind behaves differently. It notices the disrespect immediately, but it does not react emotionally. It observes. It studies the pattern. It remembers the behavior, and this awareness creates uncertainty. Manipulators dislike uncertainty because uncertainty removes control. Warrior, if you are beginning to recognize this pattern, write this in the comments. I see the game. Because once you see the test, you cannot unsee it. The second test is the guilt test. Manipulators create situations where you feel responsible for their emotions. They say things like, "You disappointed me. I thought you cared. I expected more from you." These statements create emotional pressure, and emotional pressure reveals weakness. Then the manipulator observes again. If you immediately apologize, if you rush to repair their feelings, the manipulator learns something valuable. They learn guilt works on you. And once guilt becomes a working tool, they begin using it repeatedly. Carl Jung explained something important about human psychology. Every person carries a hidden side, the shadow. The shadow contains ambition, control, self-interest. Many people try to ignore this side of human nature. They want to believe everyone acts with pure intentions. But Jung warned that ignoring the shadow creates blindness. Because if you refuse to see darkness in others, you become easier to manipulate. Manipulators understand this shadow well. They know how to appear vulnerable. They know how to appear misunderstood. They know how to play the victim. And when empathy activates, good people try to help. They try to understand. They try to forgive. But while the predictable mind tries to understand the manipulator is studying the predictable mind. They observe sympathy. They observe guilt. They observe emotional triggers. And once emotional triggers are discovered, those triggers become tools. Warrior, if this insight makes sense to you, comment this below. Awareness is power, because awareness breaks manipulation. The third test is the favor test. This test appears harmless. A small request, a small favor. Can you help me quickly? It will only take a minute. Can you do this for me? The request is usually inconvenient, but not extreme. And once again, the manipulator observes. If you hesitate but still agree, they learn something powerful. They learn your boundaries can be pushed. Next time the request becomes slightly bigger, then slightly bigger again. Machiavelli observed something important about domination. People rarely accept control suddenly. They accept it gradually. Small concessions lead to larger expectations. The predictable mind agrees too often. It does not want to disappoint others. It sacrifices comfort to maintain harmony. But each concession moves the boundary further away. The unreadable mind behaves differently. It does not rush to agree. It considers the request carefully. It protects its time and energy. And when boundaries appear clearly, manipulators lose interest, because manipulation requires predictability, and predictable people are easier to control. Warrior. Remember this principle. Power does not shout. Power observes. The predictable mind reacts to every test, but the unreadable mind sees the pattern. And once the pattern becomes visible, manipulation loses its advantage. Because in a world full of psychological games, the predictable mind becomes a target, but the unreadable mind becomes difficult to manipulate.